Hello and welcome to SRIRAM's IAS. Today in this series in which we are covering our Indian economy book chapter wise, we will be completing the 4th chapter with the 12th 5-year plan and a summary of all the planning, what all was the achievement of the whole planning years, all the 12 5-year plans, their summary, their achievements, their drawbacks, everything will be discussed. Why did we shift from 5-year planning to a broad-based, whether that is 3-year vision document or the Niti Aayog and Planning Commission debate will be discussed in the next chapter, that is the chapter 5 of Niti Aayog itself. In this video, we will be starting with 12th 5-year plan. 12th 5-year plan, this is very much important, and in this lecture, you must make sure that you make running notes, because there are some points which I have added out of the book, that is a value addition. Multiple slides are there which are the value addition actually to the 12th 5-year plan, which you should keep a note of in your notes. That is how you will develop your understanding for the I would say 30-year or 50-year or 60-year or 100-year strategy of planning for Indian government, that how did we evolve from 1947 to 2025. Not only that, we will also analyze 12th 5-year plan at the micro level. That is why you need to make those notes. So this 12th 5-year plan, which began from 2012 to 2017, was themed as faster, sustainable and more inclusive growth. Inclusiveness we already discussed in the 11th 5-year plan, that why was it important to understand that economic inclusiveness is more important. This aimed for 8% annual growth rate, that we should achieve an annual growth rate of 8%, but the actual growth which was achieved was only 6.9%. Why did this happen? And in 2014, we witnessed a change in government in India. Our current ruling party, that is BJP, Bharatiya Janata Party, came into power in 2014. Now remember that since 2014 to 2025, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, for these 3 successive terms, in these 3 successive terms, there has been major shifts in policies, whether that is economic, monetary, fiscal, or I would say political, or I would say any of the policy, there have been major shifts and we need to read them thoroughly. That is why we should take care of that in the upcoming lectures. However, in this lecture, what we will be doing is, we will be summarizing till 2017. So thereby, with the change in government, the plan was not fully pursued. Demonetization also happened in 2016. So with the change in government, this plan was somehow dropped, not fully pursued post 2014. Further, there was demonetization in 2016, in which we witnessed that Indian economy went through a major shift. After 2016, there happened to be the rollout of GST, Goods and Service Tax. The act came in place and it changed the fiscal policy of the nation. Now, what was the context and what were the challenges for 12th 5-year plan to discuss? First, there was a global crisis in Eurozone. Euro sovereign debt crisis was there, which affected India and slowed down our growth in 2011-12. Just 5% in plan's first year was achieved. Just the growth of 5% was achieved in the first year of the plan. So thereby you should understand that how the crisis in Eurozone, because there was sovereign debt, that is the Eurozone countries, in which currently we have 21 countries. There was the recent most addition of Bulgaria, which joined Bulgaria. This joined the Eurozone in the month of December and became the 21st nation to do so. Eurozone is a group of economic, I would say the countries out of the 27 countries of European Union. 21 countries have one common monetary and fiscal policy and they have one common currency. That currency is euro, and that is why it is known as Eurozone. And due to severe debt to the governments of these countries, this led to a crisis. This crisis happened back then in 2011-12. Domestic constraints were also there, as we witnessed macroeconomic imbalances. There was inflation, and due to fiscal expansion post 2008 crisis, because 2008 there was a crisis known as usually subprime crisis or the global financial crisis, which was sourced or which originated from USA. This crisis had shifts, or I would say its waves were reflected all over the world, even in India, but slightly. Post this crisis, every country adopted an expansionary monetary policy, expansionary fiscal and monetary policy, in which the only thing that was to be pursued was providing economic stimulus, fiscal stimulus to the market. Fiscal stimulus to the market will help to revive the economy, will help increase the demand, and then it will start production again. That was the main goal. In 2012 to 13, there were some tax uncertainties and investor confidence also changed. Due to this change, what happened was that the production and the economic activity in India slowed down a bit. Implementation issues were there because energy and transportation projects were slowed down. As we witnessed 2014, government changed, the policies changed, there was a slight delay in this. And due to this developmental delay, the discourse of development was set in 2014, and that is why a new government was elected by all the people of India in order to bring a change which was to be felt or missed by all the people. Now, twofold policy challenge. First, in 2012 to 2017, this 5-year plan was to address two things. One was that our economy was decelerating. As we discussed, that we were setting our bar of growth higher and higher. In this year also, we set a bar of 8% growth rate, but that was not achieved. Why? Because our economy was decelerating. That is why we thought of reviving this economy by increasing the investments quickly, by tackling the infrastructural implementation, and by introducing tax-related measures so that the uncertainties get resolved. That was one thing. Second, the long-term vision of the economy was also changed. In the long term, we thought that we should discuss, or the economists of the day, they focused on one thing. And even you will see that post this, the 14th and 15th Finance Commission, they will also recommend changes in the financial devolution also. We will discuss that. Now, the real growth potential must be achieved, and there should be structural changes in the structural reforms in the economy. First, we need to revive the investor sentiment so that investors invest in the market. Second, we need to remove the infrastructural impediments. Whatever is blocking the infrastructural impediments, we should remove that. You might have heard of hybrid annuity model, or you might have heard of built, operate and transfer model in terms of infrastructural developments. What are these models? We adopted them in the recent most era, that we should at least develop the infrastructure, build it, operate it and transfer it. Or the private players should be brought in through public-private partnership or through the hybrid annuity model. That people, the government and the private players should collaborate and cooperate, should be in a partnership to develop the infrastructure so that it gets faster. We need to address the energy sector, and NELP framework should also be clarified. Now, remember that we have witnessed heavily in the renewable energy sector also, in the solar energy, in multiple other areas, and our, I would say, renewable energy share is now increasing day by day, and it recently surpassed the non-renewable energy share. That is it till now. What were the fiscal reforms and what was to be done with resource management? First of all, we took some bold steps. Bold steps were needed to improve the public infrastructure and public expenditure. So that is why the first of this was the implementation of GST. Goods and service tax, we will discuss this entirely. There is one complete chapter on GST. We will discuss that why is it implemented, why was it implemented, why was it rationalized recently in the month of September 2025, what GST comprises of, how it operates, everything will be discussed. Subsidies, there was a question on a rationalization of subsidies, that we should rationalize subsidies. Whatever subsidies we are providing to all the people, whether that is food, fertilizer, petroleum, any kind of subsidy, any kind of pension, that has to be rationalized now. Even I will tell you one thing simple. If a person who is working today in government sector or who was working in government sector, I guess 10 years, 20 years or 30 years back, his pension, the amount of pension which he is receiving today is the amount which is generated by today's demography. That is, you need to understand it, the money paid by taxpayers today is used to pay off the pension or give the pension to those who served the state 10 years, 20 years back. Now that is something which is creating a burden which is being carried forward to future generations. Subsidies, that is also a burden on the state. That is also a burden on the state. Not only on the state, but on the taxpayer. That is why UPSC asked a question that if something is provided free to the people of India, to you, to whom does the opportunity cost of that product shift? Understood? That was the opportunity cost question which was asked in 2018. Thereby, there came questions, I would say questions were asked about rationalization of economy. So now, understand, inclusiveness and current account deficit will be the main two targets, and NPS also post 2015 to reduce the NPS. These will be some of the targets which were pursued upon since the reform era. Because since 2014 we had multiple other reforms like we had in 1991. First, we introduced GST. Second, we set a target of 3% on fiscal deficit, that we should incur only 3% of the GDP should be our fiscal deficit. Government should try to reduce this fiscal deficit as much as possible. The upper bar should be only 3%. Subsidy rationalization, only 1.5% of the GDP should be given in subsidies. Clear? Some more targets which were set, like 35% of investment target, 9% of real growth goal, the nominal growth, and 32% of state devolution, which was recommended. 32% of state devolution, this was, I believe, recommended by 14th or 13th Finance Commission, I guess 13th Finance Commission, 13, 14, 15 and 2016, 13th Finance Commission. 32% state devolution, that is the total share of revenue from taxes. Out of that total share of revenue, 32% should be given to states. Further, there were 20 core monitorable targets which were set, like first, it was for rapid, sustainable and more growth. First, 8% of real growth, 4% of agricultural growth, 10% of the manufacturing growth. These were the targets to be achieved. These were the targets or monitorable targets to be achieved. Poverty and employment, we need to reduce poverty by 10 percentage points. 50 million of new non-farm jobs to be created. Non-farm means non-agricultural or where direct cultivation of agriculture is not there. Skill certification for equivalent number means 50 million people should be certified with skills, should have certified skills. Education, we set a target that our mean years of schooling should be 7 years. 2 million additional higher education seats should be created. Elimination of gender and social gaps in education should be at least pursued upon. Now these were some of the targets which were set. For health and infrastructure, we had that we should reduce our infant mortality rate to 25 out of 1000 live births. Our maternal mortality rate should be 1 out of 1000 births. That is the death of mother. The total fertility target was set to 2.1 at NFHS 3 level, that is National Family Health Survey 3. As per National Family Health Survey 5, NFHS 5, this is currently 2.0, which is less than 2.1. That is somehow concerning also, but we will discuss this later. Infrastructural priorities, investment was to be increased to 9% of the GDP. Irrigated area or irrigated land in India was to be increased to 103 million hectares. Electricity to all the villages, all weather roads to all the villages, rural tele-density of 70%, complete freight corridors. This all was to be set up. Understood? One more slide for such, I would say, targets. In the sectoral growth pattern and resource allocation, agriculture witnessed a 4% growth, mining 5.7% growth, manufacturing 7% growth, construction 9.1%, and services. Now remember, why am I giving you all of these numbers and why do we need to understand the sectoral resource distribution and sectoral growth? Because when you read economic survey, when you read budget, when you read the annual 5-year plan, these annual reports of ministries, you must understand where to focus on. Because if this was set in the policy documents itself, it means similar data numbers, similar data parameters will be there in the upcoming documents also, even in the economic survey also. So thereby, once you read the documents, you should look for these numbers, that agriculture, mining, manufacturing, construction, services, these are the major sectors of Indian economy where we should focus on. Understood? Moving ahead. The environment and service delivery, a target was to increase the green forest cover by 1 million hectares annually. Renewable energy, 30,000 megawatts of capacity of renewable energy should be installed. Emission reduction, 20 to 25% of the emissions should be reduced. 20 to 25% of the emission reduction should happen. 90% of the households should have at least banking access by 2017. Direct cash transfer, major subsidies via Aadhaar platform with linked bank accounts to be achieved. So this was the main vision of 12th 5-year plan by bringing inclusiveness and sustainable growth. Understood? Now, what all did we achieve by this planning till now from 1951 to 2017? What all did we achieve? We will just go through it. In 1947, our economy had a GDP of 2.7 lakh crores. That was only in 1947. At the independence level. But post that, in 1991 reforms, we witnessed a growth of GDP of about $266 billion. Currently in 2025, we have a GDP of $4 trillion. India currently is third largest economy in Asia, fourth largest economy globally in terms of market exchange rate, third largest economy in terms of purchasing power parity. This was asked by UPSC. And substantial forex reserves have increased from, in 1991, we had only $1 billion of forex reserves, but currently we have around $6 to $7 billion. 600 service sector has grown globally, and India currently is acknowledged by globe as Office of the World. India is also known as Office of the World. currently our per capita income stands at 2.2 lakh rupees per person. Now that is on the nominal level. That does not mean that actually everyone is earning that much. We should keep that in mind. Social indicators of planning, that how much have we improved by doing this planning and implementing these plans. If you see, at the time of independence, we had only 20 universities, but currently we have 1100 plus universities. At the time of independence, we had 591 colleges, and currently we have 50,000 plus colleges. Health and development, infant mortality rate, child mortality rate, maternal mortality rate, literacy rates, disease eradication, industrial infrastructure, and food grain which is produced in India. India currently is self-sufficient in terms of food grains. This all was achieved by these planning years. However, these plans felt or had shortfalls also. That is, there were lacunas in these plans. What were those lacunas? First of all, we still have poverty. Despite progress, poverty remains widespread concern in India. There is high unemployment, because lately in the COVID era also we witnessed a huge unemployment gap, numbers increasing due to the unemployment. Education quality, as we know that 41% of graduates in India do not have market-ready skills. Research and weakness is very weak and is not competitive globally. Gender disparities still exist. Exports are very less. Farm productivity still remains low, asked by UPSC in comparison to China, that how much farm productivity is there in India as compared to China. You must keep this in mind and try to search for this. Regional imbalances are still there. We still have the northern belt, and in this northern belt among Bihar, UP, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, we have such belts where the poverty or I would say per capita income is very low, even below the poverty level. In 1991, due to these economic reforms of 1991, we have achieved in 1991 there was a need for reforms, as we discussed already, that we had a closed economy, economic crisis was there, the forex crisis was there, also we had some missed opportunities in the growth trajectory of India. That is why we introduced these reforms. With the 1991 reforms, we achieved higher economic growth, macroeconomic stability, increased efficiency, global integration and social development to address poverty, inequality, improve access to essential services. This all was achieved, and these are the points which you will use in your mains answer writing, because usually students do have faced a lot of issues when they are asked to summarize and write coherent answers. So these are very concise points to be written in your answers. Liberalization, privatization and globalization. These were the three measures introduced in 1991. Now, in these three measures, what we did? In the liberalization, we first dismantled the license Raj. Even lately, I was discussing in one of the classes of foundation that today, even after these many years of reforms and I would say liberalization of these many years from 1990s till 2025, there are around 35 years of liberalization now. Still, we have around 20 to 25 such permissions to be asked from in order to just start one small MSME. We were discussing an article in one of the classes of Indian economy itself. In that article also it was mentioned that in India today also MSMEs, in order to start a simple one MSME, a micro level unit or a small level unit of production, you must at least have 20 to 25 permissions, or I would say certifications, then only you can start. So understand or imagine the plethora of licenses which was required back then in 1970 and 1947 and 1990s. So we first dismantled the license Raj, which decreased the bureaucratic hurdles and removed the red tapeism from Indian industry. It allowed greater private participation in the industrial sector. We removed the trade restrictions and opened the foreign trade for India. Further, the privatization helped Indian economy to revive and introduce more investment. We reduced the public sector role, as it was said by Prime Minister also, that government has no business to do business. We encouraged private investment. The disinvestment in public sector or the public sector undertakings was decreased, which means that multiple public sector undertakings which we had, PSUs which we had, whether that was ONGC, BAIL, GAIL, SAIL, shares of these were started, or Coal India, we started to sell off the shares of these with disinvestment, allowed private infrastructural participation through HAM, through BOT, through multiple other models or PPP. Public-private partnership was introduced even in infrastructural projects. Globalization, with global trade and global investment, FDI and FII was integrated, and now majority of the sectors of Indian economy attract around 74 to 100% of FDI. Even in some sectors, we still have more than 49% of FDI. Post 1991, we also introduced some fiscal and monetary reforms. In the fiscal reforms, we had fiscal discipline by reducing the fiscal deficit to 3% only, according to FRBMA. Reform taxation system by introducing GST. Broaden the tax base and introduce FRBM Act for fiscal sustainability. Monetary policy was also changed. RBI was given autonomy. RBI was given autonomy to regulate entire banking sector. We established Monetary Policy Committee. We have not discussed it yet, but yes, it will be discussed in RBI chapter itself, for transparent interest rate decisions and adopt inflation targeting. We have a target of 4% plus minus 2% of inflation targeting. Monetary Policy Committee, the members of these Monetary Policy Committee will decide and form entire monetary policy to target inflation, have growth, price stability and growth. Both are the main targets of this Monetary Policy Committee. Banking sector was also deregulated. Interest rates and reduced the government's role in banking sector. Even the government stopped to force RBI to print more money to finance its own deficits. External sector was also encouraged to invest in Indian economy. These reforms broadly can be divided into two areas. First was the first generation reforms, then happened to be the second generation reforms. The first generation reforms were non-legislative. What do we mean by non-legislative reforms? Like to decrease government intervention, to deregulate rupee from government control, to initiate disinvestment, to encourage private sector participation. But the second generation reforms brought in legislative changes, like we brought in labor reforms, 4 labor codes, GST was implemented, FDI was liberalized, wider social impact was created. This careful implementation of reforms led to the development in India and growth, and whatever have we achieved till now, whether that is having $4 trillion of GDP or having billions of dollars in Forex or having per capita income of 2.2 lakh rupees, everything has been achieved only because of these reforms and implementation of the policies and plans at ground level. Human-centric approach with the development of human capital, social capital and inclusive growth. Inclusive growth, we had one question in mains. Human capital and social capital. We had a question on human capital in mains, a question on social capital in prelims. I'm talking about PYQ. Social safety nets were also introduced. What was the impact of these reforms? We achieved macroeconomic stability, 6 to 7% of GDP growth in entire all annual years. If you talk about annual rate of these years, it was 6 to 7% on an average. There still are challenges. Jobless growth, this was also asked by UPSC in mains. Government has not yet, government has not as employment intensive as desired, which leads to less job creation in India. Further, agriculture sector is still in distress. There is low productivity, income volatility. Farmers were targeted that we need to increase and double the farmer income by 2022, which still seems to be a farther goal. Rising inequality is there, and this was also reported by the World Inequality Equality Lab report and their Gini coefficient. India has challenges in manufacturing sector, and it is largely discussed and asked by economists that if we focus on our macroeconomics, this manufacturing sector, a majority of the problems of employment and jobless growth will be solved. Now, how? First, India's manufacturing sector in the past had critical challenges, like it was heavily restricted and controlled by government. There were policy constraints like license Raj, MRTP limiting. FDI was not liberalized until late 1990s. Infrastructural bottlenecks were there. Infrastructural development was not there. Poor roads, we already discussed that. Human capital limitation was also there because we didn't have the capital or human capital with enough skills, education, and those people who could have regulated or I would say have had that skill set to operate the industry. That was the one thing which India had missing. Land and labor issues were there. Even the land reforms, there was a difficulty to acquire land, difficulty to have land because we had a long past of colonialism. We had a long history of having the subjugation of colonial powers who themselves were traders only. That is why there was total apprehension in the Indian population towards this, I would say, capitalism. Competition from China was also there, and China in the initial years had the policy of dumping their exports into India. Post this, we introduced multiple reforms as we discussed: industrial corridors, plug and play parks. As you might be seeing industrial parks, those are known as plug and play parks. This production linked incentive scheme, this was also lately introduced. Now you should understand that all of these reforms helped us to revive the manufacturing sector. We will be dealing with all of this in the upcoming lectures, and we will also discuss the Amartya Sen versus Jagdish Bhagwati debate, in which our Professor Jagdish Bhagwati, he talks about market-led growth, that Indian economy should be focused, as the Adam Smith and the Kuznets or Simon Kuznets or the proponents of macroeconomics, as we discussed in the first lecture itself, they believed in market-led growth, or we believe in open market, or we believe in that there should be no role of government in the market. However, Amartya Sen talks about that no, it is not about only market, rather what we should focus on is the capacity development, capability development of the population. We should invest in health, education, investment, skills of the people, and that will lead to the further development. However, all of these debates are there, but what we need to focus on is our syllabus and the book which we are going through. So thereby, in the next lecture, we will start with Niti Aayog. Till then, I wish you all the best. Thank you for being here. Thank you for for watching these lectures continuously. I have seen that people are getting engaged, or showing more engagement, not getting engaged, but showing more engagement into the lectures. People are watching these lectures, and I am receiving feedback on WhatsApp and in my personal DMs also. Thank you to all of you. I wish you all the best. Jai Hind.